This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Apart from the official state ceremonies, Holocaust Remembrance Day is marked in Israel by a host of smaller but equally poignant moments. IBA's Leah Zinder reports.
Even after more than half a century, the pain of remembrance remains undimmed, especially for those who endured it and came through. This year was dominated by revelations of the shameful poverty of 1/3 of the Holocaust survivors who walk among us in Israel, some 80,000 men and women. Also this year there was an alternative remembrance ceremony held in Tel Aviv in solidarity with those survivors. And now at last, albeit much too late, a pledge from the government that this is about to change. There are some concentration camp survivors who chose to mark this Remembrance Day by focusing on the brave new world, on the young generation of Israelis. A young Air Force officer who grew up on her grandmother's stories of the years she spent in the camps invited her grandmother and a group of her friends to meet some of the F-16 pilots of the Chatzor Air Base where she serves. If I had known, said one of them, during all the years of terror and suffering in the camp, that one day I'd be standing here and that my own son would be a helicopter pilot in the Israel Air Force, it would have made it all much easier to endure. In Jerusalem, an encounter between a righteous Gentile, Andrei Gelena, and a few of the many Jewish children she saved from certain death in Nazi-occupied Belgium. Andrei was just 20 years old, a member of the Belgian underground. She displayed rare, awe-inspiring courage in finding shelter for 4,000 children in convents and monasteries around her country during the war. 25,000 Belgian Jews were taken to the death camps. Not a single child under the age of 13 survived them. Where, one wonders today, did the 20-year-old Andrei Gelena find so much strength and so much humanity in that sea of darkness? And why, one cannot help asking again, were there so few like her? And then there are the girls' high schoolers from the Gush Etzion community of Efrat. Inspired by the American movie Paperclips, the girls launched a project this year to collect 1.5 million buttons from all over the world. That is the exact number of children murdered in the Holocaust. Each button carries its own heartbreaking story. The round shape, say the students, symbolizes the cycle of the young lives that were so brutally cut short. And that's how it is this spring season, 1 week before Israel's 59th Independence Day, a tapestry of memory, pain, rage, and hope, 62 years after the Holocaust.
The forces of barbarity and evil are still active in our world. The Holocaust did not finish in 1945. With those words, the father of slain journalist Daniel Pearl unveiled a plaque engraved with the name of his son on a Holocaust memorial wall in Miami, Florida. Yehuda Pearl told a crowd of hundreds that his son died for the same reason as 6 million other Jews. An Islamic Pakistani terror group claimed responsibility for the kidnapping and subsequent beheading of the Wall Street Journal reporter on January 23, 2002. A videotape of the murder revealed Daniel's last words were, "I am Jewish." Daniel Pearl is the first person to be included in the Florida memorial who was not killed by Nazis. His father said although his son's death and the Holocaust murders were separated by many years and carried out by people of different faiths, language, and agendas, the murderers shared the common thread of hatred.
There's growing concern over a surge in anti-Semitism worldwide, with a record number of nearly 600 incidents reported last year. This, according to the annual report published by Tel Aviv University, released in advance of Holocaust Remembrance Day. IBA's Aaron Viner brings us more.
On the first day of 2006, British Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sacks warned that, quote, "A tsunami of anti-Semitism is spreading globally." The Israeli ambassador to Germany, Shimon Stein, said in October of 2006 that German Jews share the feelings of many Jewish communities worldwide, increasingly unsafe and unable to live normal lives due to the mandatory security measures surrounding most schools, community centers, and synagogues. The 6-year surge of 590 reported incidents last year includes the desecration and the destruction of Jewish property. But most disturbing was the rise in physical assault, with 269 separate incidents as opposed to 132, or fewer than half as many in 2005. The steepest increase in anti-Semitic attacks were reported in Britain, with a 37% rise over 2005. The other nations hit with increased anti-Semitic incidents are Australia, France, and Canada. Researchers believe that much of the violence against the international Jewish community stems from the Arab-Israeli conflict, and arrest records show that the majority of anti-Semitic acts were carried out by members of immigrant Arab communities abroad. Anti-Zionist propaganda and Holocaust denial are rife throughout the Islamic world, long demonizing the State of Israel and the Jewish people. Many researchers attribute the recent surge in anti-Semitism to last summer's Second Lebanon War and the election of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. The Iranian president has repeatedly called for Israel's destruction and sponsored a series of events denying the genocide of the Jewish people. Erin Viner, IBA News.
وعودة إلى الشأن الفلسطيني فعلى الرغم من الإدانات العربية الدولية تواصل إسرائيل.
In spite of Arab and international condemnation, Israel continues to build the apartheid wall, ignoring the decision of the International Court of Justice, which found it unlawful to build this steel-enforced wall, which is equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance devices. The village of Beit Hanina in the West Bank, which the wall split in half, is merely a witness for the suffering of the Palestinians from the oppression of the wall and the cruelty of the occupation.
وقهر الاحتلال.
I got two kinds, the small seeds and the big seeds.
هكذا أصبحت طريقة التواصل بين كمال صالح وعائلته بعد أن فصل.
This is how Kamal Saleh and his family communicate with each other after the wall separated their houses in the village of Beit Hanina. The village was split into an old Beit Hanina under the authority of the West Bank and a new Beit Hanina under Jerusalem, separating hundreds of families.
كتير بنعاني من مشكلة اللي هو قسم العائلات قسمين. يعني أنا دار أبوي دار أهلي دار أخوتي.
We are suffering enormously from splitting our family into two. My father's house, my family's house, my brothers and my sisters all are up there. But I am down here, which means I cannot reach them. For the past 5 months, I have not seen them. My mother got ill, went to the hospital, and I did not know how to visit her. When I want to talk to them, I come here and knock on the door. When they ask for something small like medicine, I knock on the door and then call them by phone. If my mother picks up, she comes over here and I pass it to her through the little hole in the wall.
وبسبب هذا العزل الذي يعيشه سكان قرية بيت.
Due to the isolation imposed on the inhabitants of Beit Hanina, many people migrated to other areas because of the hardship of getting to the other side of the village, whether it's for the purpose of visiting relatives or going to work.
ما بنقدر نشوف بعضنا أبداً قطعياً.
We cannot see each other at all, only as you can see here, through this door that closes us off. It's opened rarely, maybe once or twice a month, or not at all.
The construction of the wall that began in 2002 continues with the new crop of families that will become prisoners once the wall closes them off from their lives.
We feel like a nightmare has fallen over our heads. I swear, we do not know what to do. This is what we feel. We have no one to help us but God.
تشير الإحصاءات إلى ارتفاع نسبة البطالة بشكل كبير في التجمعات السكنية.
Statistics show a high increase in unemployment in the areas affected by the dividing wall. Getting a job or getting to work is difficult, if not impossible. This led some individuals to accept any work opportunity, even if it was a job which entails building the wall.
We are ashamed of telling our families that we work on building the wall. It's a scandal, but there is little work, and the situation is very bad, so we are forced to work here. My parents don't know that I work here. If they knew, they would kill me, to say the least, but these are the circumstances.
الجدار الذي التهم أكثر من 20% من الأراضي الفلسطينية.
The wall swallowed more than 20% of Palestinian land and isolated more than 250,000 Palestinians who cannot travel between their villages and cities without permits issued in advance.
على تصاريح مسبقة. هذه الأبنية الأسمنتية.
These current structures are more than 9 meters tall, blocking the sun and the wind. Israel calls them the dividing wall, built to divide the Israelis from the Palestinians. But as the wall extends further into Palestinian areas, it divides between Palestinians and Palestinians. From Beit Hanina in the occupied West Bank, Iman al-Husari, Nile TV, Egypt's news station.
قناة مصر الإخبارية.
مدار الليلة نبدأه بالملف الفلسطيني فقد اتفق الرئيس.
On the Palestinian file, President Mahmoud Abbas agreed with the Israeli Prime Minister Olmert to hold another meeting in Jericho in the West Bank. This agreement came at the end of a meeting between the two figures in Jerusalem. According to an Israeli source, the meeting focused on humanitarian and security issues. However, the two sides did not discuss final status issues, such as the refugees, Jerusalem, or the borders. The most notable outcome of Abbas's and Olmert's meeting was the allowance of goods to pass through the Karni crossing point and an agreement to soon reopen the Rafah crossing point, which connects Gaza and Egypt.
This time the meeting was in Jerusalem. The next meeting is expected to be in Jericho. Abu Mazen and Olmert's meeting lasted more than 2 hours and included their accompanying delegations. Israel focused on security issues, and Olmert asked Abbas to exert more efforts to secure the release of the soldier prisoner in Gaza, as well as to stop the launch of Palestinian missiles into the southern regions of Israel. The Palestinians presented a description of the humanitarian conditions, particularly around the military checkpoints and crossings. On this particular issue, there was some progress.
As of today, April 15th, the Karni crossing from today.
As of today, April 15th, the Karni crossing will open every day until 11 at night. It will be open for the passing of goods. The Europeans agreed to monitor the Rafah crossing. It will be opened and movement will be facilitated between Egypt and the Gaza Strip.
From, I'm not going to say today, but soon.
The Palestinians proposed a comprehensive security plan, including deploying executive guards near the Palestinian-Egyptian borders to prevent the smuggling of weapons into the Gaza Strip. The plan requests American financial backing, as well as Egyptian and Jordanian cooperation. Despite efforts by both sides to highlight the importance of this meeting, the fact that no main contested issues were discussed relegated it to being considered a mere general meeting.
Discussion centered on security issues and on the need to reaffirm a comprehensive, simultaneous, and reciprocal cooling-off period. It must be simultaneous and it must be comprehensive in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank.
Abu Mazen and Olmert's meeting did not reveal whether Israel is talking about the Arab Peace Initiative with the Arab Committee formed during the latest Arab Summit, or whether Olmert spoke of the initiative in his weekly meeting with his cabinet. But the initiative was an important topic of discussion in a meeting between the Israeli foreign minister and her Jordanian counterpart that took place on the Jordanian side of the Dead Sea. It should be noted that Foreign Minister Livni and the Israeli Defense Minister also attended the Olmert-Abbas meeting. Many security and humanitarian issues were discussed, while few political issues were addressed. If the situation continues like this, it will keep the current stalemate in place. Thus, in the context of any communications between both sides, all the stalled issues will be pushed far into the background.
President Ahmadinejad arrived in Shiraz, Fars province in the southeast, early today. The president told locals there that bullying powers have imposed corruption and aggression on humanity, something which has pushed Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine and Afghanistan on the brink of crises. Ahmadinejad added, despite all this, Iran is determined to try hard to drive up national wealth and boost public welfare. On Iran's peaceful nuclear program, he said Tehran stands firm for its legal rights, not giving way even an iota. He continued, Tehran will go full speed ahead in its bid to climb up the scientific peaks, drawing on its indigenous know-how. He further said Iran's move to join the nuclear club of nations has proved that enemy attempts, including sanctions to stop Iran, lead nowhere. Later, President Ahmadinejad headed for other cities and towns across the province. Foreign Ministry spokesman Mohammad Ali Hosseini announced on Monday that Tehran has amnestied and released 2 Swedish nationals who were captured last year on charges of photographing military installations. In a statement released today, Hosseini said following requests by the captives' families, the jailed men were pardoned in line with Iran's humanitarian efforts. The pair, named as Stefan Johansson and Jari Hjortmar, were arrested in March 2006 for taking pictures of military sites on Iran's southern island of Qeshm and sentenced to 2 years in prison. The pair were handed over to Swedish officials at the Foreign Ministry hours ago.
I've been treated very well, and I have deep ratings to be released so I can go home and take care of my family. And as I said, we've been treated very good. We had lack of nothing. And but right now, I frankly really want to go home as soon as possible.
Global watchdog Human Rights Watch says civilian deaths from war crimes and other attacks by Taliban-led insurgents have soared in Afghanistan in the past 15 months. In its report released on Monday, the New York-based group condemned a wave of suicide bombings and other assaults by the Taliban and associated groups, which, as the report added, had killed nearly 700 Afghan civilians since the beginning of 2006. Tehran and Pakistan sealed a memorandum of understanding Monday to boost mutual cooperation on transit and transportation. Under the agreement signed by Iranian and Indian ministers of roads and transportation, the two sides agreed to enhance railroad and sea cooperation. Following this signing ceremony, Iranian Minister of Roads and Transportation Mohammad Rahmati said the MOU is expected to raise the volume of Iran and Pakistan economic cooperation to $1 billion. Pakistani minister also expressed satisfaction with the agreement, which paves the way for regular visits of Pakistani pilgrims to Mashhad.
Mashhad is a very holy place and a lot of Pakistanis, they are very frequent visitor of this place. They will be facilitated by using this agreement. I think this MOU will bring the relation between these two countries and it will provide the opportunities for the people of both the countries to come closer to each other. And this MOU will also increase the trade volume between these two countries.
Four Afghan security officers working for a U.S. private security firm were killed.
They were killed after a suicide motorcycle bomb attack on their convoy along a highway leading to the Kandahar airport in southern Afghanistan.
هجوم انتحاري آخر
According to the Afghan police, a suicide bomber struck near a convoy for a U.S. private security and protection firm in the area of Spin Boldak in Kandahar province, killing 4 Afghan security officers working for the firm. The news comes as armed confrontations continue to erupt in neighboring Helmand province, where the Afghan government deployed more police units to back up the NATO and Afghan forces.
The convoy included 5 cars belonging to a U.S. private security firm. A suicide bomber riding a motorcycle infiltrated the convoy and blew himself up, killing 3 security officers and their driver.
أما في العاصمة كابول فقد تسبب انفجار عبوة ناسفة على طريق البرلمان في حالة إرباك دون إحداث.
In the Afghan capital Kabul, a car bomb exploded on Parliament Street, causing panic in the streets, but no reports of casualty. Meanwhile, the Afghan government accused some newly formed opposition political parties of trying to weaken it. It seems that the country's level of violence is not leveling off anytime soon. This news comes as human rights organizations held rival combatant forces responsible for the rise in civilian casualty tolls. In a study conducted by Amnesty International, the human rights watchdog group reported a sharp increase in the number of Taliban-sponsored bomb attacks. The organization held the Taliban, which uses suicide bombers who are often disguised in civilian clothing, responsible for the killing of civilians.
Many civilians were killed in the crossfire between combatant forces. What makes things worse is that civilians have become a target.
On the other hand, one independent human rights organization affiliated with the Afghan government criticized the NATO forces for the killing of civilians. It contested that in their counterattacks, NATO forces often failed to discriminate between civilians and armed groups. The organization cited an incident last month when 12 Afghan civilians were killed by U.S.-led forces, who tried later to hinder the government investigation into the incident.
Jazeera, Kabul.
أهلا بكم. العراق يبيت على فاجعة ويصحو على أخرى. حي الشرطة الرابعة جنوب غرب بغداد
Iraq goes from one catastrophe to the other. 2 booby-trapped cars exploded this morning outside the Al-Shorta Al-Arabiya neighborhood in southwestern Baghdad, killing 11 and injuring 50 others. 6 other Iraqis were killed when a suicide bomber blew himself up inside a bus in Atafia. Meanwhile, 2 British soldiers were killed and 5 others were injured when 2 helicopters crashed in the Al-Taji area. Now let's go to Fahima Mazani.
The Iraqis continue to suffer today just like they have been during the last 4 years. The residents of the Al-Shorta Al-Rabi'a neighborhood in southwestern Baghdad were shocked by these horrific scenes. The daily violence has raised many questions about their future.
One booby-trapped car exploded over here. Another one exploded over there. We pulled out the dead and injured.
This man could not elaborate on the details because he is still in a state of shock. 2 booby-trapped cars exploded within a short time of each other. The first one exploded at an intersection in the neighborhood, and the second one exploded at a crowded market. Instead of transporting produce, people were transporting dead and injured bodies. The power of the explosions blew some parts of the booby-trapped vehicles meters away. More than 10 people were killed, including 3 children and 5 women. Tens of others were injured and were transported to hospitals. They were the victims of indiscriminate violence. Almost everywhere in Iraq, one can find death and explosions, even in its skies. Today, 2 British soldiers were killed when their helicopters crashed in Al-Taj area north of Baghdad. This was the official report that was released by the British, perhaps to cover up a different reality. The Iraqis, however, have to deal with the most bitter reality.
A spokesman from the 3rd Division of the Iraqi Army said that the 18 police officers who participated in the events at Tel Afar were released. The Iraqi news agency quoted the spokesman as having said that the humanitarian organizations had demanded that they be released. Meanwhile, a peaceful demonstration was held in Mosul along with the funeral procession of the victims who died during the events at Tel Afar. The demonstration started from the Adli Medical Center morgue. Demonstrators placed coffins on the tops of cars and walked to Tel Afar, chanting national and religious slogans.
The new security plan failed because it deals with a security situation without addressing political differences, which are the main reasons behind the conflict. Different political factions are clashing, and the Iraqi people are paying the price, as witnessed by the dead bodies on the roadside. Sunnis, Shiites, Christians, Arabs, Kurds, and Turkmen all are being killed and injured. All these groups are being held hostage to the clashing political interests in Iraq. This time, a crime was committed in the Sunni and Turkmen-dominated Tal al-Afar city, which also houses Shiites and Sunnis. The Iraqi Turkmen Front urged all officials and humanitarian organizations to quickly intervene and stop the shocking massacre that shook the city. The Iraqi Turkmen Front released a statement saying that a militia backed by the police raided Sunni homes, took the men outside and executed them. About 60 bodies, killed execution style, were transported to hospitals. Dozens of other bodies were left on the roadsides because it was difficult to transport them. The massacre took place while the police and National Guards were watching, which is indicative of their complacent attitude. At the very least, they failed to deal with the situation properly. According to reliable local sources, many families in the areas where homes were raided are still missing. It is unknown whether they were kidnapped or whether they fled from their homes before the militia had arrived. It is believed that 11 police officers wearing official uniforms accompanied the militias while they were raiding people's homes. Of course, this massacre was committed in retaliation for the explosions that took place 2 days ago in the Shiite-dominated neighborhoods. Tens of innocent civilians were massacred and their bodies were torn to pieces when 2 booby-trapped cars exploded. However, the tragic scene in Tel Afar, which according to the Iraqi parliament speaker is as cosmopolitan as Baghdad, leads one to conclude that this crime was even worse than the explosion attacks. How can the perpetrators ever know if the people that they massacred were actually the ones who carried out the explosions in the Shiite-dominated areas? This is the question that is usually raised by the Sunnis, who reject and condemn all criminal acts, including the ones that are committed by certain groups in their names. The Sunnis have nothing to do with these groups. The Iraqis have suffered tremendously during the last 4 years of occupation. There has been a lot of bloodshed, massive destruction, and innocent people have been killed. The Iraqi Sunnis are paying the price for what some groups are doing in their names because the actions of these groups are stirring up sectarian strife against the Sunnis. It is worth mentioning that some armed groups have declared responsibility for 10 attacks in Fallujah and Anbar. They exploded 7 trucks that were being used to transport chlorine gas in the middle of pedestrians and traffic jams, killing and injuring hundreds of innocent people. One still remembers the 70 people who were killed in Habbaniya Mosque and the tens of Iraqi men who were killed while they were standing in line to volunteer to serve in the army. Yesterday, the Sheikh of Zaba tribes, Zahir al-Thra'i, was attacked, and some were killed and injured during the attack. Amongst the victims was the son of Sheikh Harith, not to mention the failed assassination attempt against Salam al-Zubairi. The list goes on, but one must realize that the Sunnis are blamed for crimes that are being committed by marginalized groups and that some members of these groups may not even be Sunnis. The Tel Afar events show that some of the perpetrators who committed the massacre were actually police officers. They committed crimes using government weapons. This clearly shows the difference between the massacre in Tel Afar and the explosions in the Shiite-dominated areas.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.